Well, welcome to yet another edition of In the Spotlight. I know there are a few people who are listening, watching. It'd be nice if you had some questions, if you put them in the comments, and we can see them here, and maybe our guests can answer them. So, since time is limited, without further ado, let me introduce today's guest, John Peters. Hello, John.
Hi there, Derek. Good to see you, mate.
Well, yeah, I was just reminiscing as you do this morning that the first time we ever set eyes on each other, I had hair and yours wasn't so grey.
Yeah, it happens. As your title says, even fighter pilots get old. There are old pilots. What is it? The old phrase: there are old pilots, there are bold pilots, but there are no old bold pilots.
Indeed, yes. There's plenty like that. So yeah, people are free to look up the history of many years ago. But what I wanted to do was find out first of all how you sort of started doing the sort of consultancy stuff. What back in that time, what you actually took from military life, because I assume you did, because that's what a lot of people did at the time. But you must have taken something from military life and taken it into the world of consultancy, leadership development, whatever it was. So think back all those years. Did you take anything?
Yes, very much so. I mean, the real privilege about the military is at a seminal age, quite youthful. You are presented with effectively one-to-one coaching and training throughout officer training, basic staff, all sorts of things, flying training, a huge amount of investment in you. So that's a huge advantage. And then that's just the experience of being in the military is quite a global experience. You're flying around the world, and as a young person, that's hugely educational. But to start the business and apply it, yes, I had that military background. I was obviously shot down and captured and held as a prisoner of war, and that catapulted me to global media attention. Through that, I was asked to speak on the corporate stage. You then start building relationships in corporate. And I found that I didn't really know the answers. They were all having conversations I didn't quite understand, using words I didn't understand. So I did an MBA, got distinction in my MBA. So that gave me the words. The surprising thing, I suddenly realized that a lot of the people were actually factually incorrect in their conversations, actually, in some of the business conversations. But then my last thing in the Air Force, job in the Air Force, was looking at human performance, human factors. How and why do high-performing people make basic errors? So fighter pilots, doctors, all these sorts of people. And how and why don't organizations learn from that error? So I put those things together. Yes, a lot from the military, the media, from academia in terms of MBA, but also the human factors performance. And I thought, well, that would come together to create a business. So that's why I started my business in 2000.
That all sounds very logical. So in the intervening years since then, what has changed? Because presumably not all of the stuff that applied or was relevant at the time is actually relevant now. Some of it will be. What's been thrown out of the basket, and what's been hauled into the basket?
Well, it's mix and match, really. I think when you start a business, I didn't understand business, and you're frightened. You don't. You are working off effectively one particular sector, so the military, and what you've learnt from the MBA over the years. And it took about 7 years, I think, in reality, to become, I suppose, what you'd say is expert, where you become a conduit for all these different businesses you've worked with over the years and can talk from experience of real issues and real projects that you've done. So, and that was, I started working internationally as well. So that made a huge difference, because you start seeing different cultures, both within businesses, but also across national borders, outside of a sort of a military environment. So I initially actually went against the military. When I say that, I didn't want to be the classic, oh, here's the military answer to business. So I went counter that and didn't really use any military examples. Interesting enough, over the years, and certainly in the last couple of years, there's a number of things that I did learn in the military that are more applicable, actually. So I very much now is a smorgasbord of experience and my own research and developing your own answers, really, and having the confidence in your own answers to be able to enable and facilitate those solutions for your customers and clients.
I don't know why it just flashed through my head, but I was just wondering how much the world of the sort of doing your MBA actually helped, because one of the reasons I was going to say I didn't fly a plane because there's no way I'd fit in a cockpit, but in a way it was very slightly similar the way when I started my MBA, because I was fed up with people saying to me, that's the way we've always done things around here, but I didn't have the examples or the language to argue with them, if you like. So that was why I did my MBA, and it wasn't so much. The only thing I really carried forward through the years from that was a whole load of stuff from Charles Handy. But the rest is just thinking, critical thinking, being able to sort of take models and rip them apart and put them together and do other things, when a lot of other people say, oh, MBA, it's a load of rubbish. What do you learn? So
I mean, I'm a progressive. I'm not a traditionalist. I agree that the MBA is, if we listen to the words, Masters of Business Administration. Well, that's a very 1960s model when, you left Harvard and you got, 100K, and back in the 60s, 100K is amazing. Now it's relatively ubiquitous, could be said. I still don't think it removes the validity of an MBA, because it's not they say what an MBA is only valid for about 18 months. Yeah, maybe, but it's the thinking tools. So it's joined up thinking. That's what I took away from the MBA.
Yeah.
Are you able to think about operations, and have you studied or have you got experience of HR, and do you understand finance, and can you join them all together? So there's a lot of people, everyone thinks they know HR and will argue against HR because everyone believes they understand people's strategies, whereas that's probably the most significant with the talent, lack of talent in the world. When I say that, there is not enough talent to drive many of our businesses forward. So how do you attract and retain talent is a major thing for businesses. But on equal measure, everyone stays really, really quiet when the chief finance officer talks, because everyone's scared of maths. And basically, the answer I found from an MBA is the question to get every finance officer is, what assumptions are you basing your figures on? Because that levels the playing pitch, because every financier is making an assumption about where the company's been and where it's going to go. So I still think there's a validity in MBA. It's just whether you have a progressive MBA program or whether it's a relatively traditional. But certainly for military people, when I say to very many military people, they've probably got greater leadership skills than very many in other organizations, because of the nature of the world in which you live. And many of them have gallantry medals and have led regiments to war, and large organizational ability and political ability. But I say, you haven't had a commercial education, you don't understand finance, and you've never done sales. And everybody outside of that very tiny percent of the population lives those three things. So I think an MBA still has a validity to engage people to think bigger and broader and basically grow up in their business thinking.
Yeah, so I can remember when I did my MBA at Open University, there were certain flavors of MBA that were meant for people in the health service and other things. So is there a place for somehow creating an MBA with emphasis on modules for people that come out of the forces, for instance, focusing on the things that they might not have done, and less so on the things they have done?
An MBA is like cruising. If you go on a cruise, everyone thinks a cruise ship is a cruise ship is a cruise ship. It's not. You've got different types of brands, and and they focus towards different types of character, from the exceptionally old to the less old, let's say. And whether you want an adventure cruise or a theatre cruise or a river cruise or all that. And MBAs are the same. You've got them across the globe, and the very best. I mean, it's quite interesting. If you take the basic formula for an MBA, I mean, so many business schools is a bit of a cash cow. And the less innovative ones are, cover the basics, but the very best really do engage people in a way where they take them to different countries, or they give them live projects, etc. So they really are engaged in a very different way. The only criticism I would suggest is it depends on the brand, because you can go, business schools are branded and they can be very similar MBAs, but one will charge you 25 grand and one will charge you 150 grand, if not 200 grand. And you say they operate off the same books, near as damn it. So it is the innovative way in which business schools have translated the basic formula of a broad, generalized education within the business environment towards how they teach it, not necessarily the subject matters.
Yeah. So, given all that, and all the learning that we've done over the past years, what's the thing that makes you now sort of hold up your hands in horror and say, have you lot learnt nothing? I mean, because first of all, leadership in particular is a big buzzword, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of people. But what is it? Is there one thing or two things, maybe more, where you hold up your hands and say, oh, we really shouldn't be doing that anymore in our businesses?
No, I don't. I just don't have that view. I mean, I really, I'm going to sound terrible. I really bulk against middle-aged people kind of saying back in the day or this, that, and the other. I'm very much look at the modern businesses have very modern solution problems to solve. When I started, you and I started in the business world, I very, very much felt we joined our parents' organization. Whereas now, at our age, we are now joining our kids' organizations in terms of there's been a fundamental shift in terms of old organizations. And if you say the administration, junior levels got the data, middle manager collated the information, and top managers made the decisions. Now, why would they need us? And that's where you need now you've got people at low levels having that level of information, so someone with experience has to provide something more. And it does get down to not necessarily just business knowledge, it's that life experience knowledge, but what value do we add? What is wisdom? The second thing is the speed, scale, and scope of our issues have created greater surprises. So, we didn't anticipate, nor did anybody anticipate, Russia invading Ukraine. No one expected, you could say, the classic Talib sort of black swans, where Hamas committed their crimes against Israel, and then the subsequent war in Gaza. All these things are happening simultaneously. So across the globe, you've got greater surprise. And I think that surprise has created uncertainty, a greater uncertainty than we had when we started business. So I think leadership is about how individuals help the collective, as in a leader, helps people deal with uncertainty. And today's world is increasingly uncertainty because it's so much more connected than previous worlds.
Indeed, yes. Right at the beginning, when I asked the question, I wasn't sort of implying that we should be teaching the young whippersnappers things, but basically, you've got lots of people. Most people probably call them Gen Z, but you've got people coming up behind that now You've got people who like the idea of portfolio careers. They don't want to stay in one place. They will use their talents for whatever. And then you've got all sorts of people above that. But the issue I particularly have is whether that some of the younger folk disregard the opinions and skills of older folk, or the older folk doing the same to the younger, and the people in the middle just being confused. Basically, I think we're entering into the world. We still do produce things, but it's a global knowledge economy, and so in a way, it doesn't matter whether whether you've got no hair, grey hairs, one leg, whatever it happens to be. If you can contribute, then that's great. And that's the problem I see, is that some people are being not excluded, but talents are being overlooked. There's a lot more talent around, I think, than is being used.
Maybe. I mean, I think you've just covered a whole load of very broad and deep issues. I think it's always been that age has always expressed a criticism of youth, and youth has always wondered about age and opportunity. A portfolio career is I think, the advantage of an older generation, because when we all bought our houses when it was in the UK 3 times the national average mortgage, whereas now we've got youth which has 8 or 9 times the national average. So are they doing a portfolio career out of interest, or because they just got to afford a more expensive lifestyle? So, I mean, there are, behind your reflections there are huge, we can make huge assumptions. I quite like the solutions the younger generation have. I think they're exciting. I think what the opportunities there. I'm not a negative sort of person. I embrace the technology. And it's, I think, my sense of age is, how do you contribute and continue to contribute as you get older?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. One of the presentations I do, I use some research which basically talks about the length of a business life cycle over the years, and from a sort of industrial revolution to about the 1980s. From beginning to death, a company could survive for up to 75 years, which meant that our fathers and grandfathers could have gone to work for their entire life and collected their gold watch without encountering some of the business crises and other things that we have now. And by the 1990s, that was 16 years. And apparently in 2020, that had fallen to somewhere between 6 and 8 years. So, yeah, we need new solutions, and yeah, we should be listening to the people that can provide them. And many of those are a fraction of my age, certainly.
Well, but they're looking at I think ideas can come across. I'm not really age dependent on that. I see unimaginative people, both young and old. I see imaginative people, young and old. And it's, whether you're progressive or conservative. I suppose one of my challenges I find is how conservative a lot of youth is that I come across in business, where you go, why aren't you? They don't seem to be angry. Well, they're anxious, but they're not angry. In the 80s, when I was, in university, everyone was angry and everyone was pushing against the system. So whether I agree or disagree about some of the sort of push against things like the green issues and anti-oil, etc. Whether I agree or disagree with the methodologies is not the case, but at least they're angry about something. I think there's quite a lot of compliance, because in terms of some younger generation, because they leave and they have their iPhone. Everything is very immediate, and therefore they don't really build over time. Whereas I think back in the centuries, people started their life with nothing. Whereas the expectation is with the TV, the internet, the mobile economy, they see the world they should be having and they want it all now. So it's a change of expectations. But the world has got wealthier, and therefore that expectation has generated an anxiousness as well, because they want it now.
Indeed. Yeah, I must admit, I find myself wanting certain things now, which is very, very, very unfortunate. You press a button on a computer to order something, and if it's not delivered in 30 seconds, you feel very upset. So, yeah. Maybe we all need a digital detox.
Well, I don't think it's, you see, all this, let's work in reality. Let's not lament in sort of nostalgia. It has always been the case. You could say when the railway came in, everyone was going, oh my God. When the computer came in, the paperless office, well, that didn't occur. With AI now, end of the world. I just don't view it as such. I think it's embracing that technology. The only thing is, to go back to one of your first points of the MBA, it does show you the importance of education, increasingly so, and in a global sense. And that's where you get sectors of society that don't value education, and then almost in a cultural sense remove themselves out of the game, because it used to be that regions used to look after one another. Now we're all operating in a global world. And so if you want to recruit someone now, why would you just look in the UK? I was talking to a company the other day. They were trying to recruit someone, and it was a digital job, and they were looking in the UK and said, why are you looking in the UK? You can look to India, Brazil, across the globe. They don't need to be in the UK for you to employ them. Now, those things scare people, and that's where you're getting I think in a political sense across the globe, you've got the rise of populism and nationalism, because globalism is frightening. So when there's mass uncertainty, it goes back to leadership again. It's about how leaders create a narrative that makes us certain enough to step into the unknown. And when you've got such a global uncertainty, people push against globalism and believe in people who say, well, I will solve all your ills and provide a simple solution. And so you can't solve complex issues and wicked problems through just straight simplicity. The answer may end up simple, but I call that advanced simplicity. It requires real brains to turn something really complex into a simple that people are prepared to follow, and that is leadership. But that requires years of experience and training, or talent, to be able to translate those solutions.
Yeah, it's a branch of something which a guy, I don't know if you know him as well, Dr. Paul Thomas, calls simplexity, which he introduced to leadership, which is it's effectively solving a wicked problem, but in a simple way.
Yeah,
but it's not simple. But yeah, that's what, to be honest, that's what fascinates me, actually, solving those types of problems, peeling away the layers, digging down and solving them.
Well, the two mantras I have in my business are, first of all, it's the speed, depth and breadth at which you learn. So how fast can you learn? It's adaptability, but how fast can you learn and learn new stuff at pace? And that's both individual and as an organization. Secondly, depth is in people want immediate solutions, but and I work with lots of businesses. They go, let's do strategy in 2 days in a very posh hotel, and you go, well, strategy doesn't emerge in 2 days. Real thinking requires depth, and that requires time. All of us with the smartphones, how often now, and given the role we're both in, how often now do you scroll about 3 paragraphs and then no further, and the article's 5 pages long? Because we need an immediate answer, but it requires real depth and real thinking. That requires time. And thirdly, it's breadth, is sharing that learning, because human beings learn unbelievably slow. Learning from your own experience is the best learning. But one, are you learning the right things? Are you having the right experience to expand that learning? And it's far better to learn off other people's experience and pull that together, and you learn at a fast rate. So it's a speed, depth, and breadth of learning. And my other mantra, which is leadership, is to change an organization, change the conversations. And that's very much of how do we change our internal conversation thinking? How do we change this conversation? Because there'll be, okay, we're both white male, middle-aged blokes, but if as most of my clients come from a different ethnicity, a different nation, a different religion, different politics, different gender, different age, all those filters, how does my internal thinking transport itself through all those filters, through their filters, into their way of thinking, that we can actually have a dialogue rather than a debate, which is who's going to win, but a shared conversation with a center. And then the third one is self-talk. And this whole third conversation is where we, how do we turn impossible to possible? How do we turn I'm not confident to I am confident? Those are the human conversations that we have to engage with across generations, as to who are we, what do we want to do, can we do this, do I believe in it? So those are really my mantras. It's the speed, depth, and breadth of learning, and to change an organization, change the conversations.
Well, that's quite a nice point to conclude, actually, talking about the possible and the impossible. So we'll leave the audience to ponder that. So anyway, thanks for dropping in and chatting about things. I'm not sure, a long list of things, in fact. So thanks very much for doing that. There have been no questions, but if anybody wants to put things in the comments afterwards, then please do. So thank you very much, John, for that. And I shall see everybody else, I'm not, in a week or two, probably. So bye for now, everybody. I'll see you very, very soon.